And greetings. Happy, Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace. He's Todders, and he is Aaron McIntyre. Want to welcome a brand new partner here on the show, Red Balloon. They understand we've got values. Our values, they're under attack at every single turn. That includes in many of America's biggest workplaces, where patriots are made to attend woke DEI trainings or support pagan causes that they don't really believe in. If you think it's bad now, just wait till election year. But Red Balloon Work is fighting back. They're America's largest woke-free job board. And every week, tens of thousands of job seekers visit Red Balloon looking for a new career without all the woke nonsense. When you visit redballoon.work, use promo code STEVE to receive 5 free profile search credits. That's a $50 value. That's redballoon.work and promo code STEVE. Want to thank all of you. They keep pouring in. I mean, the amount of you that have emailed me or contacted me via the inbox on any of the platforms to say congratulations for the Grandpa news yesterday. So I appreciate each and every one of those. There's way too many for me to respond to each of them individually. So please, I forgive me on that front, and let me just issue one collective thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you that have wished me those congratulations. They mean a ton. And it's a big week, by the way, if you're Amy Deace, because she found out that it's going to be the birth date of a granddaughter yesterday. Her birthday is actually today. So want to wish my wife a happy birthday. Steve, I thought you banned the birthday mentions. Well, except when I want to do them for people in my family. Then it's okay. That's totally fair, Todd, correct?
It is.
Yeah, because it's our show.
I mean, keep things where they need to be at home, man.
Indeed.
Indeed.
I mean, you guys have to put up with me for just a couple of hours a day. She puts up with me the other 22 hours a day for the last 26 years.
Speaking of putting up with you, this is the second day in a row, Michigan jersey.
Yeah, Desmond Howard throwback today. Yeah.
So just to be clear, is it Jersey week or is it insufferable Michigan Wolverines week?
Very well played. Very well played. Yes. You will. Thursday's show will not be a Michigan jersey. It will not.
Will be a football jersey.
It will be. It will be an NFL great. I'm deciding.
Is it new?
No, the Earl Campbell one's the only new one I have. Okay. So I'm deciding which football great NFL Hall of Famer I'm going to wear tomorrow.
I've got to think.
Well, there's two Hall of Famers, and then a guy who should be a Hall of Famer in my book. So I'm down to those 3 right now.
Do you have Namath? Don't you have
That's one of them.
That's one of them.
Yep.
I thought you have.
Namath is one. Riggins is another.
Riggins. Sure.
Now those 2 are Hall of Famers, and then Jimmy Plunkett, who is a Hall of Famer in my book.
Of course.
Those are the 3 that I've narrowed it down.
You've worn the Plunkett jersey several times. You should do one of the other 2.
Do one of the other 2?
Yeah.
I love the Jimmy Plunkett jersey. I mean, that was my first. That's when I fell in love, guys, with the sport. I was 7 years old or 6 years old, and I'm just watching this guy with 3 chins and acne and a single bar helmet win the Super Bowl. And I'm thinking, I could grow up and look like that guy and pull this whole thing off. Well, I actually did grow up to kind of look like him, but I'm nowhere near the football player he was, obviously. But he kind of made you feel like, and if you remember those teams back then, they had this guy out of the Lavelle Edwards BYU passing system, Mark Wilson, like a #1 pick in the draft, and 6'5", like your robo pro style quarterback. And the Raiders would always try to make that guy the starter. And then by the middle of the year, they had to turn to the fat, acneed, single bar helmet Jimmy Plunkett to dig him out of the Tom Flores hole they were in, because he went with Mark Wilson in training camp instead. And that guy was the first person to win 2 Super Bowl MVPs, was Jim Plunkett. That's an answer to a trivia question for you there. There you go. Now you feel complete, and that absolutely useless information has been dropped upon thee. How fulfilled does thou'st feel?
I was complete after you said no more Michigan jerseys.
Nice. All right, coming up today, the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation will join us. Coming up towards the end of the program, we will play buy, sell, or hold starting at the bottom of this hour. But let us begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Idalia. Hurricane Idalia made landfall in Florida's Big Bend area this morning as a Category 3 storm after briefly being upgraded to Category 4. The hurricane registered sustained winds of around 110 miles per hour and is expected to inflict damage as it tracks northeast across the state. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says the restoration effort is already well underway.
We currently have 54,000 households that are out of power throughout the state of Florida. but there have been over 100,000 households that have already been restored through hard work all through the night.
Of course, it's now abundantly clear Donald Trump and his surrogates have made a conscious decision to ignore the deadly situation in Florida. Trump posted a bevy of videos and posts last night attacking Ron DeSantis and bragging about polls. Not a word about Idalia. When asked about this by a numbskull reporter, here's how DeSantis responded.
Not my concern. My concern is protecting the people of Florida, being ready to go. And we've done that. And look, in Florida, you just have to do this. I mean, this is something we put a lot of time and effort into throughout the course of each year, knowing that there's going to be time where you're going to have to activate it. Now, we had a major one last year, one of the most expensive on record. We were hoping not to have any this year, that maybe we would get off lucky, but that just wasn't in the cards. So you deal with it.
Speaking of Trump, he was on the Glenn Beck program yesterday and said he did a great job with COVID.
This country was coming together. Then we got hit with COVID. We did a great job with COVID. It has never been acknowledged, but it will be in history. We did a great job with the ventilators and all the things we did, because nobody knew what it was. Nobody had any clue as to what it was. And we did a great job. Moving on, now is the part of the montage where we talk about coincidences. The following two stories broke on the exact same day. In Washington, D.C., 5 pro-life activists were found guilty yesterday in a federal court for violating the freedom of access to clinic entrances. It's a Clinton-era law passed to stop sit-ins at baby-killing facilities. They were also charged and found guilty of one count of conspiracy to block the entrance to the Washington Surgery Clinic in Washington, D.C. Lawyers for the Thomas More Society representing the defendants said all they did was kneel in prayer and pass out pro-life material. The defendants could face 11 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and fines of upwards of $350,000. Also, on the same day that news broke, we found out that the city of Denver, Colorado, will be paying out $4.7 million to Black Lives Matter's rioters who violated that city's emergency curfews during the George Floyd riots. The Denver City Council approved the multi-million-dollar settlement after a class action lawsuit accused the Denver Police Department of using then-Democrat Mayor Michael Hancock's emergency curfew order to target protesters demonstrating against so-called police brutality. Also in Colorado, meet Jaden, a 12-year-old charter school student from Colorado Springs who had the unmitigated gall to attach the Gadsden flag to his backpack and subsequently got kicked out of class for doing so. The boy's mother secretly recorded a meeting between her, Jaden, and the school administrator who described why Jaden got kicked out of class.
So the reason that they do not want the flag, the reason we do not want the flag displayed is due to its origins with slavery and slave trade. That is what was, that's the reasoning behind them do not want this displayed.
The Gadsden flag?
The don't tread on me.
Okay. Which is the Gadsden flag? Okay. Okay, so he's, what's gonna happen if he doesn't pick it up?
He is able to go. I was actually just telling him, like, I was upset that he was missing so much school. I'm like, so I asked if can he just take his stuff out of his bag and go back to class. Like, I just want him to go back to class.
Even Colorado's Democrat Governor Jared Polis came out and slammed the charter school for what they tried to pull, reminding them about the history of the Gadsden Don't Tread on Me flag. The charter school's board has since decided that little Jaden can indeed wear that patch. And finally, this.
Is there anything that could happen with him indictment-wise that would say, all right, maybe this disqualifies him for president?
Not for me. I'm with him to the finish.
All right, thank you so much.
He could stand on the front steps of the White House and commit murder, and I'm with him.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Favorite part, so am I on now? Okay. My favorite part of that video is that he volunteered that information. Like, that wasn't even like a snarky reporter, trying to corner some poor unsuspecting red stater,
And one more thing.
Yeah, he wanted to make sure you knew this. Like, he wanted to make sure he could commit murder. I mean, he volunteered that. I mean, that was going to be the end of it. I mean, I think the three of us, I'll speak for myself, given the level of lawfare here, and we're just look at DC alone. You're going, what is it, 11 months that they're going to serve in a jail cell in D.C. right now? Those pro-lifers, is that what the sentencing is?
11 years.
11 years, I'm sorry. 11 years. I mean, if that's who we're dealing with here, then I would also be of the opinion there is nothing that could come out in these indictments. Nothing. Based on the indictments as they are filed, there's just nothing there that would cause me to think if I would not vote for him for president against the Democrats. That's how I agree with that statement. Am I alone on that? Where are you guys at with that?
I agree with it, and it dovetails nicely with the fact that Trump just admitted that he's really proud of all those people he hooked up to ventilators.
We'll get to that. Just keep on the subject.
It's the same damn subject.
I know. We're going to
exists.
connect. I just want to make sure we make a singular statement here. Yes or no? Like, even if you found out that Trump did, that Trump ordered, because they got, we don't tell you this stuff in conservative media. So a lot of times we're lying to you by omission. And I think probably a lot of you want us to, and so that's why you don't mind. But they did get it's about a week and a half ago, the feds down in Miami did get a witness to flip. Fired the Trump attorney that the Trump people had hired for him and flipped to the feds. And he's one of the people involved on, and I think it's in the obstruction charge, whether Trump ordered, was it tapes at Mar-a-Lago? There's 41 felonies. Forgive me, I'm having a hard time keeping up with all of them. But I believe this is where the feds are claiming that Trump ordered tapes at Mar-a-Lago to be destroyed or something along those lines. And he was one of the ones that originally said that's not the case. And now he has flipped to the feds. So the assumption is that is the case. I mean, I don't care.
Here's the thing. If he had said Trump could stand out on the front steps of the White House and kill somebody, I would ask, hey, did they go through a fair trial?
Yeah.
Did they deserve to be
killed? What are we talking about?
Yeah. Hey, that'd be pretty based if they deserved it.
Yeah.
No, he said murder.
He wanted to make sure murder was the word, and he volunteered that. And didn't have to. Could have just left it. He had made his point. Could have just left it there. But he was eager to display his idolatry. That's what you see there is idolatry. And more, we are becoming like the other side. I see this more and more. And I can just tell you, you have no chance to restore a republic based on God-given rights via idolatry. God will not. All those mentions in our founding documents of invoking providence, and which was the 18th century word for the will of God, asking God for divine guidance, all those things you see in our founding documents, none of that is going to be honored. God will not honor anything involving idolatry. Why? You have made a god of something else, and he will not share his glory with another. God is just fine using problematic people to accomplish great things. Donald Trump's just not a good person. We've said this for years. If you believe otherwise, I don't know what your definition of good is different from mine. But he's done some great things, and I'm okay with that. Because you know what? I'm not a good person either. Todd, you a good person?
Nope.
Who's a good person?
Nobody.
Nobody is.
Except for one, and we killed him.
Yeah, there was one person who was good. And we hung him in a tree. No one's good. So I'm totally fine with God showing us, hey, I'm using this person right now to do great things. And they're not a good person because there aren't any good persons. So I'm using this person right now to do great things. And I'm fine reading those signs of the times and lining up behind where clearly truth and light are moving, even if they're not necessarily moving through the vehicles you would typically assume or even desire that they move through. Fair?
Yes.
That's life east of Eden for the last 7,000 years.
It's pretty pragmatic. Don't make the perfect the enemy of the good.
Yep. I mean, I'm an example of this. First of all, I'm a 50-year-old man sitting here in a 32-year-old football jersey that a guy last wore in 1991 when I was in high school.
That was that long ago?
That was how long ago it was, yeah. Number two, my inbox is full of you every day reminding me, and you're all correct most of the time, of my moral failures. My language can be too crass. I can be too fired up. I can get too angry. Those things, most of the time when you criticize me about this in my inbox, you're correct. All those things are mostly true. Most of the time. I am not the person that should be telling you and defining for you what idolatry is. Your pastor should have done that. The nice guy. The guy that didn't almost, go through a divorce 3 years ago. The guy with Pleasant Valley Sundays. But is that guy telling you that truth these days? Is it coming from him?
No,
he's not.
As your show editor, I'd like just to answer all these people right now by going back to what you've said before. I like my way of doing something more than your way of not doing anything.
Well, that's true, Mr. D.L. Moody, one of my all-time favorite quotes. Yes, but thank you for resetting that. But no, the nice guys that speak the Queen's English are not largely doing that for you, unfortunately. And so God has to use schmucks and chumps and, Cro-Magnon men like me to do it. Because the word's going forth. It's not getting stifled. It never comes back void. It's going out. And as Luther once observed, God had to talk through the back ass of a donkey once. It's going out. It's not going to be stopped. It will go out. And if the people who look the part right out of central casting, if it's not going to go out through them, then it'll go out through other means.
The funny thing about the Old Testament, if the pagan emperors of the world understood anything about the faith, they understood that. Mm-hmm. Yet we, the so-called people of the faith, don't. I mean, that you are absolutely right. They tried to stop it.
It can't be stopped. It can't be. If the religious leaders won't do it, then a shepherd will come out of the fields and he'll do it. It will come out. It will go forth. It will not be stopped. And as Jesus quantifies in the New Testament, not even the gates of hell. By the way, what is a gate? A gate is a defensive measure, right? You put a gate up to keep something out, right? So that means if Jesus says that not even the gates of hell will prevail, then who's on offense here? The church is. Yeah, not the other side. The church is. Now, I bring that all up to say I am very appreciative that God used a man whose character is so anemic in certain areas that while the state he lives in is facing a Category 4 hurricane, he is retruthing libelous, debunked claims from nutters like Laura Loomer. And Matt Gaetz and Byron Donalds are so afraid to cross him that they won't even share tweets from the governor of the state. These are, this is, I think, right next to Gates' district, I believe.
Yep.
And they won't even share tweets from the governor on safety and prevention and restoration, lest they be seen helping DeSantis look more presidential. That's pretty low knuckle-dragging kind of stuff, frankly.
That's being kind.
But that all being said, I'm also thankful that God used that knuckle-dragger to give us the Abrahamic Accords and overturn Roe versus Wade. See, I'm willing to just look at this and say what's good and what's bad, and that's how the kingdom of God operates. God works through problematic people because there are only problematic people. When this crosses over into idolatry, though, is what you see there in the clip at the end of Aaron's montage. The eagerness to show that I will now violate God's law. So when God worked through Donald Trump to overturn Roe and to sign the Abrahamic Accords, was that in accordance with God's law or in defiance of it?
The former.
The former. And that's why those things were great.
Yes.
Because no one is great but God. No one's great but God. That's why they were great. Not showing any concern at all for the state that you're living in, being in the eye of a Category 4 hurricane. And even having your associates not even willing to use social media to update their constituents with what the governor's office is saying. Is that in accordance with the laws of God, or would that be in defiance of them? Defiance, because that's narcissism. How does God feel about egotism and narcissism from humans at that level?
Not so much.
Yeah, because who do we channel with that level of narcissism? God's primary enemy. I will ascend. I will be like the Most High. Okay, you will change what you believe for me instead. That's idolatry. Whenever we change what we believe and know to be true or suspect to be true to conform to something else that is not, that is idolatry. And that's what's in that clip. That's idolatry. That man has made Trump a god. So that murder is okay. Number one, he didn't have to say that. He wanted to. He was eager to say it, eager to show it. Number two, as Aaron pointed out, he could have gone full Steve Deace, after a fair trial, of course. If Donald Trump wants to put down, decides to be the executioner right there on the White House lawn of the people that stole the election from him, and then he throws in after a fair trial, Is that clip even in the montage? It might be. And we're like laughing at it and like
Based.
Yeah, like giving that guy a helmet sticker. We're like, we're with you, right? Because righteousness was fulfilled. We had a trial, right?
Yes.
People were given a hearing, right? They were given a hearing, and before governments that are installed by God, they were given a hearing and they were found guilty of violating the social compact at a treasonous level, right? And so we're executing traitors. I think we're okay with that because we had a trial. All righteousness was fulfilled, and this is what civil societies do to traitors, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But that's not what he was saying. He wanted to make sure to even use the word murder there. What's the difference between a killing and a murder? A murder is an unjustifiable taking of an act, taking of a life. A killing can be just a killing. It can be unjustifiable. It can be justifiable. It depends on the context of it. But there is never a context where murder is justified. Never. Murder in and of itself, that's the commandment, by the way. It's not thou shalt not kill. It's thou shalt not murder. Murder in and of itself is wrong 100% of the time. And he was eager to show, though, that I am willing to redefine right and wrong for Donald Trump. And not in defiance, because you know what? I'm willing to redefine right and wrong according to the unequal measures and scales that we are using for justice on a civil level for Donald Trump. I don't care if Donald Trump obstructed justice. I watch the same people charging him with it steal an election in front of my face. See what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And were any of them ever held accountable? No. And in fact, you get censored for pointing it out. So I have no problem altering what a corrupt civil system says is right and wrong for Donald Trump or anybody else when it is to expose their own corruption and hypocrisy.
Absolutely.
And if he would have stopped there, we'd all be saying, we're on that guy's team. He'd be the new rich man north of Richmond. He'd be the new guy, right? But he didn't stop there. He went on to say, I will redefine what God says is right and wrong for Donald Trump. And that is idolatry. God is not a respecter of persons. There is only one God. There are no others. Do not make graven images. Do not turn your idols into gods. Do not worship idols. And that's what that is. That's idolatry. Now, here's the thing you have to be concerned about, though, and I pointed this out on Twitter X or whatever the heck we're calling it now this morning. Idolatry works both ways. If you are unwilling to give Donald Trump credit for his accomplishments, and if those accomplishments are, by any objective standard, was it a righteous thing in accordance with the laws of nature and nature's God to see the shibboleth of Roe smashed?
Yes.
Was it a righteous thing to sign and negotiate the Abrahamic Accords?
Sure.
Yeah. If you deny him those accomplishments, you are an idolater now. You have now decided you've made him your God too. You've done the same thing that guy in that video has done. You have made the decision that you will not honor what God says is holy and righteous because of the vessel he chose to perform it through. You know who you sound like? The Pharisees who said, well, nothing good comes from Nazareth. You sound like them. Didn't look the way I thought it was going to look. Wasn't the system I thought it was going to come through. Didn't come in the packaging that I was confident in my own understandings it was going to look like. And so I rejected truth incarnate, actually. Truth in flesh, truth incarnate, I rejected it because it didn't comport with my system. I expected a warrior, a general. I expected someone to restore our nationalistic identity, not save me from my sins. I didn't expect a savior who would die for me, but would slay for me instead. You're actually just like the guy in that video. You guys should hang out. You're just two sides of the same coin. You're both willing to alter that which God says is right in order to criticize or conform to Donald Trump. And thus you have made him an idol. And I'm just going to tell you, we have no chance. There's no chance that God is going to bless any movement that succumbs to idolatry because we have chosen other gods. He's not going to be a part of that. On the authority of his word, I can tell you that 100%. No chance. God will work through our sinfulness, work through the sinfulness of the founding fathers. Several of the men signed several of the 56 men that signed that document went home to their slaves, including the guy that wrote the gosh darn thing. He went home to his slaves too. He'll work through our sinfulness at a very fundamental, problematic level. Why? Which of us are not sinners? None of us. None of us are not sinners. So therefore, again, that's why we're not good people. We're all sinners. He will work through our sinfulness at a fundamental level. Provided we are still putting him first. What does God mean when he says David was a man after my own heart? David was an adulterer. David was an accessory to murder, if not outright committed it by what he did to Uriah, putting him on the front lines. He was a bigamist. Broke God's law numerous times, took a census when God told him not to. Nearly lost his kingdom because one of his daughters was raped and he did not act. David, not really that great of a guy. And yet God says this is a man after my own heart. But the one thing David always got right in the end is he recognized God is God and I am not. He put God first when it counted most. And so God worked even through such a sinful man, such a debased figure as David. And he gave him a kingdom that will last forever and put his own son, his own Messiah, through David's line. He will work through us and our sinfulness at a fundamental level, even if we are rotten to the core in some places. But the minute, no matter how pious we are, and this is very important, no matter how pious we are, no matter how quote unquote moral we are, the minute we put something else in the esteemed place of reverence that God alone belongs, we're done. That's the paradox here. You can be very pious and moral and principled. And you can be very eloquent talking about issues, but you worship cows instead of eating them. And you preach there are 33 gods, and that's just the major ones instead of the thousands of minor ones. You are an idolater. God will not bless that. You won't. You can be fun. You can a great family man, but you're preaching there's 33 gods and Jehovah is maybe among them, if not one of them at all. God's not going to bless that. No chance. Not happening. On the other hand, you could be really debased in some areas. But in the end, when confronted with your debasement, proclaim the sovereignty of God, and God will work through that. Or in the case of Trump, surround yourself with people who do that, and God will work through that. But God never works through idolaters, ever. He will not share his glory with another. First two commandments, I am God, don't make and worship other gods. That's the summary. That's the summary of the first two commandments, basically. Don't get those right, doesn't matter how well you do with the other 8, right? Nope. That's why they're number 1 and number 2. Got to get the first 2 right.
Uh-oh.
Indeed. We're not getting that right now, are we?
You're not.
We're not. And that, more than anything else, is why we're in trouble. If anybody else on earth, if Mike Pence came out today and said what Donald Trump said to Glenn Beck yesterday about COVID, all of conservative media would destroy Mike Pence for that, would they not?
Yeah.
Yeah. If he said verbatim what Trump said, he'd be getting destroyed. No self-awareness, everything. Trump said it, crickets. That's idolatry. God, no chance to win. Not going to win. We already have a group and we have a movement in America of idolaters. And they're always going to be better at it because their father is the father of lies, a murderer from the beginning. They're always going to be better at it. Always. We already have a movement for that. We already have a team for that. Already have a political party for that. That's all. That roster's full, man. We're good. But if we're just going to become rival idolaters now, we're doomed. No chance. In fact, you're better off actually not even being culturally or politically engaged at all than doing that. Hey, today we've got a special treat for you. No. Your show finally got canceled by the Blaze? That's not today, at least. Another treat that I know you all are going to be very excited about. It's a wine so rare, And you'll probably be toasting the Blaze when they finally get smart enough to do such a thing. But for now, you'll just have to settle for the wine by itself. It's a wine so rare that it sells out practically every time it's released. It is the Sunal Illogico Malbec wine, red wine, a never-before-imported gem from our friends at Bonner Private Wines. From deep in the Calaki Valley in Argentina, breathtaking altitudes at nearly 9,000 feet. This is the third highest vineyard in the world. And what sets this bottle apart from home or restaurant wine? Well, it's highly rated at 91 points. There is no fining or filtration done, and that preserves its true natural taste, and it boasts a staggering 10 times more resveratrol, which is good for heart health, has 93% less sugar than the bulk grocery store reds that you'll buy. Bonner Private Wines is the sole importer of this amazing Malbec. And right now we've arranged for you to get this exclusively by visiting BonnerPrivateWines.com/Steve, BONNER for Bonner, as in B as in boy, BonnerPrivateWines.com/Steve. Become a member now. Act fast. This thing sells out quickly. Don't want to miss your chance. And you're going to get this and the other wines for over 50% plus free shipping. 50% off and free shipping at BonnerPrivateWines.com/Steve. All right, with that, let's get to it. It is time to play Buy, Sell, or Hold. And this is where Aaron has collected from you and the audience things that and propositions and predictions, Todd, that you and I are going to determine. Are we buying that? Are we selling that? If at any point during the show we decide, wow, I just can't take a stand. I'm that weak. I'm that anemic. I'm that flaccid. I'm that emasculated. And I got to call for a hold. If you've done that, then you have violated the dude code. And you have to write a love poem to Lindsey Graham that will be published on X for all to see.
Can we go back to last week when you didn't have the heart to...
No, I'm back to being mean. I'm back to being mean again. That was last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Roses are red. You finish the line.
Nope.
Roses are red.
Nope. Never gonna happen.
Roses are red. Violets are blue. Lindsay, all I think about is you. See, that I got you started. Go ahead. Finish up.
No.
No? All right. Aaron, go ahead.
We will begin quickly with these three submissions from Jeffy's Butt Baby Franchise Guy 17. Lions making the Super Bowl. Buy, sell, or hold quickly.
You have to sell. They've won one playoff game since 1957. This is their best chance in probably 30 years.
Cardinals tanking for the first pick.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
You look at who they were cutting and everything else. They're tanking for Caleb Williams, and they are smart too. Buy.
The Bears will suck again.
I'm going to sell. I don't, we'll define suck.
Below 500.
Okay, I think they'll be below 500, but I think that they'll have a year somewhat like the Lions had last year, that step before the step year. I like some of their additions. You're going to get a defined answer. I love Justin Fields coming out of college. I think we'll get I can't tell if his passing has been underwhelming because their weapons have been, or his development has been. The Ohio State offense under Ryan Day it's not the same, but from an NFL perspective, it's kind of similar to the offense under Steve Spurrier. And now we've had Justin Fields, his predecessor Dwayne Haskins. Unfortunately, what happened to him with his murder, but he wasn't developing before that as a quarterback, despite being a first-round pick. And the reason there's similarities is because Spurrier's offense schemed guys so wide open, and you just don't get that open in the NFL. You have to throw into very tight windows. Everybody's covered almost every play, unless there's a breakdown. It's hard to, week in and week out, scheme people open. You can do that in college. And Ryan Day schemes a lot of people open. And so I can't tell if Fields, and this will be the year with, getting DJ Moore and Chase Claypool there for an entire year. This will be the year to see if Justin Fields is ready to take that next step as a quarterback. And I think that he will. I think that they'll be interesting into December. And so I'm going to say sell. They won't suck. That could mean that they finish with, 8 wins and just under 500 or 7 wins, but they'll be interesting in December. So I'll sell.
I more or less agree with that.
G. Harmon says Trump was correct when he said we'd get tired of all the winning. He never said who would be doing all the winning.
See, I am as frustrated as anybody in America by what has gone on from a decision-making standpoint with Donald Trump since March 16th of 2020. I've written multiple best-selling books about it. I've done how many shows about it. But we cannot forget that prior to March 16th of 2020, life here was very good. I mean, one of the reasons we're all, if you live in the suburbs like I do, one of the reasons we're all sitting on homes that have greatly increased in value that we now can't sell because of the Let's Go Brandon economy to people like Todd that want to buy them, okay, is because of what happened when he was president with the economy. It wasn't the greatest economy ever, like he proclaimed, but that doesn't mean it wasn't pretty damn good. And you cannot undersell, we had the best family median income growth in this country since the dot-com boom. That would be so far this century. Life was good, particularly if you just tuned out like the dramas, the Russian collusions, the Kavanaughs. If you didn't have to talk about that stuff every day like we did, because that's our job, if you were an average American that just didn't have to tune into that, you lived pretty good in America from 2017 through 2019. You lived pretty good. Life was good. We got, Israel's, hanging out with the Saudis. You're thinking, okay, cool. I'm not doing any stupid wars. Life was good, was it not?
Sure.
It was good. It was clearly better than what we have now. And you could argue it was even objectively good. Not just better compared to the demons running the joint, but like objectively good, even without that comparison. And I don't think we can forget that. And I say that as someone, his persona grates on me. I can't stand it. I can't stand it when he's doing stuff I like. I can't stand it. Okay? So I get, man, aging in dog years where Trump is concerned every news cycle. He makes everything as hard as even harder than it has to be. He makes everything more difficult than it has to be. I get that. I get the frustration with that. I get that the grading aspect of that. But in the end, what matters most to our kids and our grandkids are results. And so I think this goes too far. Even though I admit, given the way he's behaving right now and has behaved a lot the last few weeks and months, he deserves probably something like this. I think it goes too far, so I will sell.
I'll buy.
Next up, Paul Sellers. Ketchup is the greatest condiment of all time.
Oh, hard sell. Multiple. I'm a big mustard guy.
Yep. Dijon mustard.
Yep. I just bought ballpark mustard. So I didn't tell you guys this story.
A mustard story?
A mustard story, yes. Bought ballpark mustard at Progressive Field where the the Guardians play. A lot of the Cleveland fans, based on what I saw a couple weeks ago, haven't really embraced the whole Guardians motif quite yet.
Excellent.
I mean, I saw plenty of Indian stuff there, okay? So I keep forgetting that they changed their name. And so they were selling like the ballpark mustard that they put on their hot dogs there at the park. And so I bought one, and Amy's like, you're never going to get that through TSA, So we get through TSA. We're about to go. I've got this thing in my shoe with a sock buried at the bottom of my my bag. And we were sitting there like, we think that we are like Bothan spies smuggling the Death Star plans.
Theme from Midnight Express is playing in the background.
Yes. Okay. Dun. I mean, we're like both sitting there like, is it going to make it? Is it going to get pulled aside? Are we going to make it? And the look of pride on my wife's face when the bag went through, she's like, stud. And I looked at her and like, I told you I got this. We walk out of TSA and we stop to get something to drink for the flight. Okay. What do you think is prominently displayed right there in the gift store?
This is
mustard.
what I
The same exact ballpark mustard I thought I had successfully smuggled through TSA. Okay.
That's what I was wondering this whole time.
I'm not a stud. I'm a schmuck. I did all that for nothing.
Can you only get that in Cleveland or something?
I've never seen another. Well, I've not been to another baseball stadium in a few years, so I don't know if other stadiums are selling their own ballpark mustard, but they were. So I even brought it with me today to put on my my lunch after the show. So.
This is classic Deace food fetishism right here.
Yeah. So I mean, but back to the question at hand. Mustard in general is dramatically superior to ketchup, so I will sell. Barbecue sauce, dramatically superior to ketchup.
See,
I will sell.
I have a-
Chick-fil-A sauce, dramatically superior to ketchup, so I will sell. And I like ketchup.
Yeah, but that's why I'm buying. I love all the things you just mentioned equally, if not above and beyond. But like ketchup, it's like by the objective standard of most people's palates, it's clearly the king. And it's not just going against schmucks, like you said. It's going against great options. Most people are in love with ketchup. I just got to hand it to, hate the game, not the player kind of thing, right?
I'll tell you this. If you've never put ketchup in your scrambled eggs, you are missing out.
No, see that? No.
That
no, this is the exact...
phenomenal.
Disgusting.
No, that's just wrong.
That is phenomenal. Ketchup in your scrambled eggs is phenomenal. Yeah.
Salsa, but...
Yeah, salsa's great. In the eggs, in the scrambled eggs.
So is ketchup. Ketchup in your scrambled eggs is great.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, man.
Testify.
I have been making my own burger sauce this summer for my burgers. 2 parts ketchup, 1 part ranch, 1 part Dijon mustard. Amazing.
So you actually are making a burger sauce. You're not just buying an off-label version of Thousand Island dressing and calling it your special sauce.
Is that what that is?
That's typically what that means.
Now we're going to sully Big Macs. We're really doing this?
No, I love Thousand Island dressing. I'm just saying that's the special sauce is their own off-label version of Thousand Island dressing. Sacrilege. It's all sacrilege.
All right, moving on to more pressing matters. Tyler Bruder has top 5 songs that should have been the band's biggest hit. Number 5, Slaves and Bulldozers by Soundgarden.
No way. No way, man.
I don't know what it is.
I mean, Black Hole Sun is a symphony.
Yeah.
It is a magnum opus. That is their greatest song, and because it is rightly recognized as such. Don't be too smart by a half. All right.
Separate Ways by Journey. I think he's got a little bit of an argument here.
No.
Maybe you can. I mean, I'm okay.
It's a great song.
It is a great song, and I'm okay if you think it is their greatest song. I don't, but I'm okay if you think it should be considered their greatest song.
Yeah, so on.
This one, I appreciate this Simple Man by Lynyrd Skynyrd, but it's still got to be, what is it, Freebird?
It has to be Freebird. Has to be. Yeah.
I mean, they
or
did
Sweet Home Alabama.
Yeah.
Or Sweet Home Alabama. Yeah.
Number 2, Where the Streets Have No Name by U2.
I think this is a great call.
Yeah.
Now, my personal favorite U2 song is from the same album. I still haven't found what I'm looking for, but man, if this is what you think should be considered their greatest song, you'll get no argument out of me. I mean, it's really close between the two, and they're on the same album, The Joshua Tree. This one I think is a really good take.
My kids were playing the remix of I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For from the movie Sing 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really well done. And so it just got me thinking, I haven't listened to the Joshua Tree in a while. So just like a week ago, I listened to it all the way through. I mean, just unbelievable.
Yeah.
The whole thing. Yeah. The whole thing.
It is. Yeah.
And number 1, I don't know about this one. Roll with the Changes by REO Speedwagon.
Great song.
It is a great song.
Now, their greatest song, in my view, is Time for Me to Fly. And I think it's one of the most underrated songs of all time. But if you think that this is their greatest song, then I will absolutely allow it. So I think the last 2 that he had, I think were really solid takes. I like it.
And that was a good list. I
mean,
overall,
movie was I just
idea.
watching recently that had Roll with the Changes in the movie. I just watched a movie recently, and they were using that film in the film. I'm trying to think of what it was. I can't remember what it was. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sean Griffiths is next. The internet social media.
Oh, it's the Gran Turismo movie I just saw. They use it in there. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sean Griffiths says the internet and social media is the ultimate double-edged sword. On one hand, it spreads social contagions and lies like nothing ever before. On the other hand, it's been instrumental in breaking away from mainstream media propaganda and allows those with discernment to find the truth.
I think this is true.
I agree with it, but I'm going to sell. I think the Word of God is the ultimate double-edged sword. I think it convicts the believer and the unbeliever alike. That being said, I think your overall analysis
outside the Bible,
outside of the scriptures, your overall analysis of what social media has done, both good and bad, on an existential level is 100% accurate.
Mr. T, campaign strategy idea from Ron DeSantis. Advertise to Trump supporters who are worried about Trump's issues to vote for Vivek Ramaswamy if they refuse to consider DeSantis. Vivek is only in the race to split the anti-Trump vote, make it backfire instead. I'm going to sell because all data that I've seen, public and private, shows that Ron DeSantis is overwhelmingly the second choice of Trump voters. I know if you're on political Twitter, you don't think that's the case. But I promise you, outside of political Twitter,
It is. And so I wouldn't be marketing people that you are the second choice of to vote for anybody else other than you, actually. Also.
Agreed.
You have to remember, political Twitter is not reality. It's just not. It's important. It's where narratives and get crafted, debunked. It's often where news breaks. I'm not saying it's not important. I think it's very important. I use it, of all my social media usage, Twitter would be 90% of it. That being said, though, you have to understand what Twitter is. It is a tool for engaging on narratives. It is not a tool for determining public perception or opinion. You kind of need more than 7% of Republican primary voters to be on a tool to truly gauge perception, right? Mm-hmm. You kind of need more than only 23% of your accounts are actually U.S. based to gain public perception, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have enough market share to truly gauge public perception. That doesn't mean it's not important. It is very important. And important discussions occur there daily. But I would not make large extrapolations about the larger populace on the basis of what you see within those conversations or how they're conducted via Twitter.
Just Casey, DeSantis just tweeted this photo of a 100-year-old oak tree that fell on the governor's mansion in Tallahassee. She and her 3 kids were home at the time, but nobody was injured, thankfully.
Wow, I'm looking at that picture right now. That's insane. Wow.
Over under on Trump tweeting that picture negatively.
What are the odds?
I would say plus, over under on Trump saying that I prefer governors who don't have trees fall on them.
That's what I'm talking about.
They're saying a metaphor.
In fact, I'm going to tweet that.
Todd, you want to do this? Actually, no, yes. We don't have time for this. We'll just tease this. Top 10 rock band singer guitar duos of all time. We'll hit that after the top of the hour.
All right. We'll hit that and more with more Buy, Sell, or Hold when we come back here with Hour 2. We'll be joined by the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, as well. Stay tuned. All right, back here with Hour 2. Here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. My name is Steve Deace. He's Todders, and he's Aaron McIntyre. And you can let us know who you are and what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Just email us, steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Find me on Truth Social at Real Steve Deace there. If you're a podcast listener, we'd love to find your 5-star review if you like the show, of course. Thank you to all of you that have submitted them. Thousands of you, in fact. Let's keep those coming. And also, make sure to hit subscribe, or in the case of iTunes, follow, because that means every new episode will end up in your feed right away. And you'll make sure you don't miss a single one, because why would you ever want to miss an episode of this show? Except for all the times that you do. Thank you for all of you that have hit subscribe or follow. We appreciate each and every one of those as well. Constitution Wealth has helped our listeners align $10 million already this year with their American values. And they think there's a lot more work to do here in this audience as well. They did a back of the napkin calculation. They think there's billions of dollars of investment capital in this audience alone. All right. And so this is where they want to help you no longer have your principles and portfolio in opposition. You can align your profit with the prophetic with our friends at Constitution Wealth. Help them build the parallel economy together. Use your money as a weapon in the spiritual war that is going on right now. Learn how to do that at constitutionwealth.com/Steve. Again, that's constitutionwealth.com/Steve. One more time, constitutionwealth.com/Steve. All right, let's continue on with part 2 of Buy, Sell, or Hold. Aaron.
Mark from Meriden has a top 10 best rock singer and guitar duos of all time. We'll start at the bottom.
Wow. Okay.
Honorable mention, Bono and The Edge. Come on, man.
How's that not in the top 10? Yeah. How is that not in the top 10?
Already off to a bad start here. 10, Benatar, Geraldo.
Like Pat Benatar?
I guess so.
I don't know.
Come on, man. You cannot put.
Wasn't she? Wait, isn't she married to him? Aren't they like a?
I knew she married somebody in her band. I don't know if they're still married or not. I don't know. But come on. You cannot put Pat Benatar on a list ahead of you two guys. Except if we're talking like, who's prettier. You can't do that. You can't, guys. We can't. There are moments before you hit send. You just need to look at your work and realize that's a mistake. I mean, pay the $8 a month, go back and edit that tweet. Okay? You can't do that. Sell on that. Sell.
I would sell too. I have heard people complain that the Edge is kind of a one-trick pony.
A one-chord pony?
Now,
that's a pretty good chord.
But that's the point. Yeah. Like, are we going to be snobs, or are we going to just acknowledge that, you found the sweet spot and you went with it? But yeah, I'm going to sell. But okay, let's see. I mean, I don't mind.
He's not a shredder, but he's like the best rhythm guitarist on the planet. Number 9, Rose and Slash.
Should be on the list.
That has to be on the list, yeah.
Delp and Scholes at 8.
Who's that?
Who the hell is that?
Don't know. Delp and Scholes.
Let me
look this up real quick.
I'm going to look it up. Delp and Scholes. Who is that? Scholes Delp. Brad Delp. Oh, Boston.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, yes. Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Again, Boston literally has like 3 albums. Okay. Now, one of them is one of the best-selling albums of a decade. But they can't be ahead of Bono and The Edge. Come on, guys. No.
Perry and Sean. Or Sean. I don't know.
This seems...
Oh, like Steve Perry and Neil Schon? Oh, from Journey?
Sure.
Okay. I'm fine with them being on the list.
Number 6, Scott and Young.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, Angus Scott, or Angus Young and Bon Scott.
Okay, that's got to be on there.
You could argue, should it be Angus Young and Bon Scott, or Angus Young and Brian Johnson? I mean, one of the greatest selling albums of the 80s is Back in Black, the first album they did without Bon Scott. So, but I'm okay if you're more of an Angus Young guy. Sure. I'll buy that.
Going to be hearing that in Kinnick Stadium in T-minus 71 hours.
There you go.
Number 6, did we do Scott and Young? Yes. Number 5, Daltrey and Townsend.
Yes, that's a must.
Yeah, that's a must. You could even argue they should be higher. Yes.
Number 4, Jagger and Richards.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's why they're probably not higher. What
that
we're
could be why.
Coming
up.
Yeah,
that could be why. Yeah.
Number 3, Roth and Van Halen.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely top 5.
I would not put it ahead of Daltrey and Townsend, but I certainly think that it should be hovering somewhere in the top 6 or 7. So I'll buy.
Number 2, Mercury and May.
Too high.
Yeah.
Should be on. I'm okay with it being on the list, but it's too high. Should definitely not be ahead of Jagger and Richards. Should definitely not be ahead of Daltrey and Townsend. I wouldn't put it even ahead of either of the AC/DC combos, but it should be on the list. It's just too high.
It's just not classically guitar-driven music. It's some of its songs are, but like
some of their songs, some of their best songs are actually classically driven. But
yes.
I hear you. Yeah.
And number 1, Plant and Page.
I mean, I completely agree with this.
So that was a really weird first 5, but top 5.
Finish strong.
Yeah.
One that's missing, I guess, that was certainly popular is Ozzy Osbourne and Randy Rhoads.
Oh, Randy Rhoads. I got to tell you, man, back in the old days of Guitar Hero, there were many a nights where getting up the next day to do the WHO show, trying to get past what's the song I'm thinking of?
Crazy Train?
Crazy Train. Trying to master Crazy Train on Guitar Hero. I mean,
I've also never ever
trying
played
to mimic
Guitar Hero.
Randy Rhoads on that was just a lot of sleepless nights.
Did you
trying to conquer that? Before I finally did.
Ozzy Osbourne collaborated with Elton John back in 2020. Did you hear this song?
No.
Ordinary Man. Oh my goodness.
Is it good?
Is incredible. You need to listen to it.
Okay.
In 2020?
Yeah.
Huh. I was busy that year.
Elton John. I mean, you can't really hear. We were a little bit busy. You can't really hear. I think it's Elton John's more background vocals, but my sister sent it to me, and it's an amazing song.
First time hearing of it.
Next, first I'd heard of it a couple months ago too. Andy W. says DeSantis' VP pick will be Nikki Haley. As much as I would love to see Kim Reynolds on the ticket, Haley brings foreign policy experience, which was the best part of Trump administration, and she's a minority female, which matters to enough people to make it significant.
Sell.
Yeah, I just think he's got other options. If there were no other clear female options, I would entertain it, but I just don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't. I think here's something I have learned about Ron DeSantis. Now, I've had a few opportunities to talk to him publicly and privately. So I've been around him a little bit. Not nearly as much as I was around Trump the first time he ran, but I'm catching up, okay? I've had more of an opportunity to be around him and a more of an opportunity to be around the staff that's around him most of the time as governor. And this is to his detriment, by the way. What I'm about to say is to his detriment. Guys, I cannot tell you how little he factors in political calculations like what's in what's in that note. It really, truly is. If Daniel Horowitz were a taller, athletic Catholic, that's who Ron DeSantis is. I mean, it's just total ideologue. It doesn't, this kind of stuff just, conversations even off the record, like I will actually try to inject these kinds of things into conversations. And I mean, I will get looked at like I've got, both eyes in the same socket. It's just, it is truly not an act at all. It's just the patronage and sensationalistic and realpolitik angles that Trump that's Trump's natural habitat politically. He loves those areas. Trump and DeSantis could not be any more different as men. They are completely different men. DeSantis disdains all of that stuff to his own political detriment, I would add, particularly on the patronage aspect. I mean, you watched Megyn Kelly. She was out there destroying DeSantis. He goes on her show, and now she's out there defending him all the time. I mean, the amount of how much access matters in our business matters a lot. The patronage aspect of this business matters a lot. Okay? And that's true in any media. If for how ornery and cranky he is known to be as a figure, Nick Saban gives the media a lot of access, does a ton of press conferences, does a ton of interviews. Until recently, Jim Harbaugh did not. And so he got disdained. Now Jim Harbaugh is doing all kinds of them. And so now people are defending him. Now Paul Feinbaum, who was trying to get him fired 3 years ago, is defending him constantly. Access matters to media a lot. And one of the reasons why is we're your conduit to the newsmakers. And so when they don't give us any access, it makes it hard for us to deliver the content that you want. And so there's aspects of DeSantis's persona that his disdain for this stuff is admirable. It's probably why he's able to do things like restore people's power overnight. 100,000 people that lost power to a Category 4 hurricane had it restored like this morning when they got up, while the hurricane still is not finished yet. Because when he says, I'm not paying attention to what Donald Trump says about me, I can promise you being around, he's not, guys. He's really not. Like, I'm like one of those people that's like, I think you should probably pay a little bit more attention. Okay? He does not care. I mean, he's the Terminator, man. It's just, he's on a mission, and we don't move on to the next mission till the mission. Like, I asked him once, I said, why do you think you're in a private conversation? I hope it's okay I say this. If not, somebody will yell at me later, and I'll deserve it. Why do you think your campaign did not get off to the start people anticipated, given what you had done in Florida? And I mean, he just flat out said, I basically just outsourced the entire campaign. And while I was finishing the legislative session in Florida, we had to have that session. We had some things that with all the, and you could just tell, like sitting alone with him in a room as he's saying this, it's legit. Like, it's not like a line he's rehearsed. It's like, all the things I couldn't get done before, now I get reelected, and I've got all this political capital, and I can bend the legislature to my whim. I want to do it right now. I don't want to spread it out. I want to do it now when we have the momentum. And he's like, look at, and you can just tell by the passion. Look at all the stuff we got done. We bent the legislature to our will, and I didn't want to miss that opportunity. And so I just waited until the legislative session was done. All my focus was on that. And then when the session was done, I went over to the campaign. I'm like, oh, this is not really this is not set up the way that I had hoped. He meant it too. Like, he was just doing one thing at a time. He meant it. He meant that. I could just tell he meant that.
That's why I love it. I love it.
It is
so
a
much
ruthless
that,
level
by the
of
way,
efficiency.
For anybody who really cares, That's the campaign. The results are the campaign, which is why I went on my rant. It's not theoretical. He does stuff.
That should be who we are.
Yes. And I'm always going to demand
and I'm never going to stop you from doing that. And I agree with you. But we also are living in a world where there is not an insignificant amount of people who would much prefer to find out what DeSantis' return put down is for Donald Trump than to learn about the fact that 100,000 people caught up in a Category 4 hurricane who lost power last night, woke up this morning to see it had already been restored.
And now I've seen
that's not interesting to them.
Up into the 200,000s.
That's not interesting to them. What's interesting to them is DeSantis came back. They want Chuckle Hut. That's what they want. Yeah. That's what they want. And that is not an insignificant, unfortunately, that is not an insignificant amount of people. That's why the focus he displays can also be done politically at his own detriment. Now, some of you are going to say, well, then explain to me why he won by 20 points. Because the people that lived under his governance, that benefited from the focus that Todd loves, they don't care about that. Like, if you don't have power in August in Florida, okay? If you don't have power in August in Florida when humidity is 7,000%, you don't care what his comeback to Donald Trump's put downs are. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I want my damn AC back on, right? you want your life back. If you lived under the ruthless, efficient way he governs, you're like, I can get used to this. And you're like, I don't need the drama. In fact, let's create some drama. Can we get rid of term limits in Florida so he could do this another term or two? Because I like living like this. But if you don't live in Florida and you're not living under the direct benefit of the ruthlessly efficient way in which he handles his business, you don't have that same emotional connection. And so you're looking for the show. That's the difference.
But almost any place else, except for Iowa and a couple other places, your life clearly sucks more and you wish you live in Florida. Do you not understand that? And did all this start with the Nikki Haley question, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I just, they don't think like that. They don't. I mean, I've asked him a few things point blank. I've asked Ron a few things point blank. Why don't you say this or do this? You know what his response has been to me? I don't think we can realistically deliver on that, and so I'm not going to say it. And it's like legit. Again, just two guys, one guy named Ron, one guy named Steve. I'm not into saying things that I don't think I can deliver on later on. I'm just not going to do that. There's a lot of people that want you to say things that they know you're not going to deliver on later on.
Really?
They would prefer that,
really?
Actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just love that, and this is so important. He's not, as important as it is, and Steve laid it out, how important it is to win this, he's not afraid of losing, which is so important because the one reason that's at least tied for first place amongst all of the ridiculous Republicans that have let us down in the past is that they're just terrified of losing.
Like someone in DeSantis' staff, like if he is the nominee, he's going to say, well, I'm going to pick the person I think would be the best vice president.
Yeah.
And heaven forbid something would happen to me, they are ready to step in. Someone on his staff is then going to have to come, that he trusts is going to have to say, well, here are some political calculations to consider. Why does he like Kim Reynolds? Their personalities are completely different if you know both of them. You know, and again, I don't know him well, but I've been around him a lot more in the last month. And so and I know our governor. So I'm going to be on a very small list of people that have spent personal time with Kim Reynolds and Ron DeSantis, probably. Mm-hmm. Like one guy who's done even more of it, because he knows the governor better than I do, Governor Reynolds better than I do, would be Bob Vander Plaats. But I would be in a very short list of people who can speak to what Kim Reynolds and Ron DeSantis are like as individuals. Completely different personas. It's really just comes down to, I like the way she governed and how she led her state. So I think she'd make a good president. Again, I'll go back to what I said a few minutes ago. If Daniel Horowitz were more athletic and Catholic, this is the politician he would be. In case you're wondering, this is probably why Daniel has been friends with the DeSantises for 5, 6, 7 years. This is probably why. Okay. One guy, got a college baseball scholarship, and was an athlete. Another guy is, 5'5". But aside from the physical differences, on a personal level, they're very similar, even to this point. If you talk to Daniel outside of this arena, he is the sweetest, coolest dude. When he gets into this arena,
scary.
I'm intimidated, okay? He is the freaking Terminator. Outside of this arena, if you talk to Ron DeSantis, you'd be just like, I had no idea. And if you didn't know, you'd be like, that's the guy that won Florida by 20 points. He's just a guy named Ron who enjoys the fact that he married a girl he thought was hot. He's just a normal dude. But something happens when he steps into the squared circle, okay? Total different persona happens. Very similar. Like, they're just normal guys, and then when they step into here, they're like, if we have to do this, then there better be a body count. That kind of stuff. They're just... Okay, I know. You're getting aroused.
Yeah, you were.
You're wondering what Lindsey Graham is doing right now.
You were talking about that. I was going to say that love poetry we started off with. I mean, I'm swooning, baby.
But Trump could not be any different as a person. As a person, not any different. And that was always one of the things I struggled with. I liked Donald Trump personally a lot. Used to tell you that all the time. And this public persona, the stuff just on Truth Social last night about I never saw any of that. Never did. I mean, I saw a guy that was literally would give shirts off his back to people. Just people, Iowans walk into his plane just handing out, $300 ties and, taking pictures. I just, the stuff that we see, like King Saul act, I just never saw any of that. And unfortunately, that's most of his public persona.
Moving on by moving back, Brett Sturley on the singer guitar duos, and our old friend Chris Pandolfo, who's at Fox News Digital now, has probably been cursing our name for the last 13 minutes for forgetting this.
This Metallica or something?
Lee Lifeson from Rush. Got to be on that list. I'm not a huge Rush guy, but I would agree with that generally.
See, I would more go with Rush from a vocalist-drummer duo.
That's fair.
In my view.
Next, Alexander Rogers, the Vivek Buttigieg, both questioning Al Sharpton. Well, they were on the same tour. They were not both questioning Al Sharpton.
I think Buttigieg was questioning Dick Gephardt, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. Buttigieg was questioning Dick?
God.
Moving on.
It's not a coincidence. Much of our public discourse, in particular the debates and contentions within and between political parties, is entirely contrived.
For the most part, this pre-Trump was, for the most part, true. I don't think it's as true anymore. But it's not on the issues. Most of it on the issues is still true. Most of the Republicans you elect, most of them, do not agree with you on the issues. At best, most of them just think the Democrats go to the point of going too far and being icky. But when it comes to Trump, the disdain is very real. And, we could discuss the reasons for that. That's been discussed ad infinitum. Because he represents people like you, because he was once one of them and then walked away to represent people like you. They thought by getting in the nomination in 2016, he'd be a clown they could beat and Hillary could win. And instead, he blew up their plan. There's all those things are true to some extent, or at least one of them is true for everybody on the other side. So because of how much they hate Trump personally, that statement is not as true as it used to be, but it's still as true as it used to be when it comes to the issues. I mean, Tennessee right now is having a legislative session for gun control called by the governor, a Republican. So on the issues, that's pretty true. But when it comes to the person of Donald Trump, that's not true anymore.
Yeah, I think the deep state has us living in like a multiverse. I think that's what you just described, Steve, where it's true depending analogy on what the deep state needs it to be true.
Yes.
And I have breaking news, by the way. Our friend Paul Alexander says he's losing so much respect for you because of your ketchup take. I thought that was important.
I said I really liked ketchup. I just didn't think it was as good as mustard or barbecue sauce or Chick-fil-A sauce.
He finds you wanting.
I like ketchup. I even put it in eggs. I like it.
I think we need to book him. There could be an amazing condiment skit from Paul Alexander in our future.
Nice.
Next, Jeff Gibson. Most iconic American moments since 1969. Number 1, 9/11.
I don't know if I want to call that iconic.
And 6, gosh, you know what? It's hard. I don't.
Is it okay to use a tragedy like that, an attack as iconic?
Well, if you're willing to allow that iconic is not necessarily a positive, yeah. I still think
is there a context where iconic is not positive? I'm asking. I mean, I typically
this one.
I think for the purpose of this one, if he's proffering this, but I still say no. I think it maybe should have been. I think people expected it to be, but then I don't think that is. I think there's things before and after it. So I'll sell on it being number 1.
Number 2, Roe v. Wade overturned.
Oh, that would be sure for me. I mean, I think that's the signature. That issue created an entire political movement and realignment. And it has been the signature cultural war issue for a half a century. So I'm okay with putting it on the list. You might be too high, but I'm okay with it being on the list.
But to me, iconic means it transcends boundaries. It can't be marginalized. So I'm going to sell again.
Number 3, the moon landing.
Oh, sure. It should probably be number 1. I figured if we're going back to 1969, that was July of 1969, that would mean it should be number 1. Otherwise, why are we just arbitrarily choosing 1969? Yeah. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. I mean, the reason you'd pick 1969 is because the moon landing is number 1.
Yeah.
Otherwise, then why'd we pick that year?
Right. I agree.
Okay.
Number 4, the Reagan assassination attempt.
Sell? That doesn't...
Yeah, I'm going to sell on that too. I mean, what's number 5?
Watergate.
Okay,
that
belongs on the list.
Iconic.
But then the Berlin Wall coming down has to be on that list, and I'd replace the Reagan assassination attempt with that. Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting one from D.S. Charlesworth. Mike Trout from 2012 to 2016 played in 95% of Angel regular season games. From 2017 to 2022, he's played in 70% of Angels games, despite the fact he'll probably make it to the Hall of Fame if this trend continues. Trout could end up being the greatest what-if player of all time.
Well, he's going to make it to the Hall of Fame anyway, he says, right?
Yeah.
Then I disagree.
I guess, is he saying just in terms of
perception.
Totals? Well, no, but also
because we could do this in the
stat
NFL.
Totals he would have had.
Look at the jersey of the guy that I wore on Monday. His career cut short because of the physicality of the position he played. Look at Terrell Davis, who just got into the Hall of Fame. What did he play, like 6 complete seasons? That's it? But 2 of them, I think, were one of them was a 2,000-yard season and another one nearly was. Mm-hmm. And so because of the acknowledgement of what he could have likely been without those injuries, he still gets into the Hall. You know, and so to me, if we're still putting Mike Trout in the Hall, then I don't know what might have been conversation is. Or is the conversation even a greater player than Ken Griffey Jr.? He'd have been a natural version of Barry Bonds. Is that what we're saying?
How many
maybe?
Stat categories would he have owned?
Okay.
I think I still will sell though, because part of this is, and this is why the Cal Ripken story was so incredible. That just showing up every day is part of this gig. And I think, I think he's a gamer. I think his injuries are legitimate. I don't think this is load management or anything like that. And furthermore, I respect the fact that he's stayed with the Angels despite the fact that he's not as known because of it. But I think just playing every day is part of this thing. So I think that his coulda, woulda, shoulda just isn't really relevant to me anyways.
More breaking news, by the way. Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, this was a Category 4 hurricane 12 hours ago.
Yeah.
Just announced that the Tampa and Tallahassee airports will be fully reopened by tomorrow morning. And the Gainesville airport will be reopened tonight. This was a Category 4 hurricane 12 hours ago, guys.
This is more important than a natural disaster discussion, too, because we have all these ridiculous notions of what government is supposed to do now. This is what he also fundamentally... This is the kind of thing... Not forget just a storm. Don't you guys, when we have all kinds of people getting degrees and all kinds of nonsense, and you have NASA putting rainbow flags on things, like don't you drive down the streets wondering, like, how, when we hand off civilization to our children, are we even going to have like the train's running on time kind of stuff. Like, who's doing the plumbing? Who's fixing the sewers? Like, we just don't have a mindset for that. He's just old school on so many different reasons. This is my job. I will do it well. And who knows? That may be the silver bullet. We've just got so used to mediocrity on so many different levels. I think this is fundamentally important, and it's not just because it's a hurricane. It's because this is what government is really supposed to do.
Yes.
And he's serious about it. I mean, yesterday he had almost 20 items on his schedule between like 7 and 9 a.m. This morning, his day started at 4 a.m. with the meeting.
I just don't think...
He's just serious about it.
I just don't think, based on the exposure I've been able to have with him in the last few weeks, I just don't think he's ever going to give you the show that you want. He hates it.
Thank God.
Okay? Now, and talking to people that have known him and worked for him longer than I have, they all agree. So you know what that means, though? We live in an era where the show does matter. It does. To some extent, it does. And so if the candidate isn't going to provide you the show, then the campaign has to. Like, the campaign's got to, like, literally market that this guy's the Terminator. He's more machine now than man. Okay? They got to market the show, because that's the era in which we live. And so if the candidate is just never going to provide that for you because it's not who he is, you know, like Daniel was never going to call himself the prophet of woe and lamentation, right? Daniel's not going to self-gloss. That's just not happening. All right? I had to do it for him. Okay?
I think he agrees with you. That's why Christina Pushaw is a name we know in Florida, right? That's what she did down there, right?
More rapid response than branding, but yeah. I mean, I'm talking more branding than rapid response. More branding. That you need. Then if you're not going to get the hype from the candidate, you need. If your candidate's Chuck D, someone's got to be Flavor Flav. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Now you know what I'm talking about. You get that reference, right? Someone's got to be out there with the clock around the neck, leading the hype. Okay. If the candidate's Chuck D just dropping truth bombs and dope rhymes, and it's all business, someone's got to be Flavor Flav. All right.
Call the governor and give him that advice right now.
Get a Flavor Flav. That, what are they calling it? The heat canopy or whatever that led to the heat wave we had in July is back.
You been talking to John Kerry or something?
I don't know what it's called. I think it's called the heat canopy or something. Okay.
Who had that on Dace Bingo?
Heat canopy?
The climate Moab.
It's just going to get really hot, okay? Leave me alone. It's going to get really hot again. Make sure you get a hold of our friends over at Sweat Block. They can help you with that, particularly if you got to be out and about running errands, going and doing appointments that aren't going to be canceled because it's 97 degrees with 114 heat index, right? So make sure you've got control of your excessive sweating from Sweat Block. With their antiperspirant wipes, that's kind of the OG that kind of established them, that you put on your armpits for excessive sweating there, that can work for up to several days. Their deodorant stick is the absolute truth, man. It brings the pain to your sweat. But I love the deodorant lotions that work both to stop you from getting swampy, but also give you that, smooth feel that, Todd, you like that.
You want to play? Let's play. Do you think?
I just wanted to see that look.
Do you think Lindsey Graham would like to join you for a heat canopy? How do you like them apples? Oh.
Aaron, you'll be getting an email that we have to do a Sweat Block make good later this afternoon.
This is Daniel Horowitz right now. Thoroughly unimpressed.
Anyway, you should be impressed. It's a great product, man. Use it myself. Sweatblock.com is where you want to go. Promo code DACE to get 20% off. Promo code DACE to get 20% off at sweatblock.com. And let's welcome in the unamused prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz. Daniel, we have breaking news, a video that I want to show you and get your instant visceral, as well as the audience's, instant visceral reaction to this video. Aaron, go ahead.
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator. Benny.
Yep.
Okay.
Somebody else have a question? Please speak up.
That just happened in the last 10 minutes with Ditch, who, by the way, based on our current trajectory, has never been more qualified to be president than he is right this minute. That just seems to be what we want. We want 80-year-olds that are in obvious decline as a country. We seem to, more polls show us that that's what we want more of. One more trip around the mountain, the desert with the boomer generation. But that notwithstanding, there he is. That's even worse than when this happened about a month ago. Completely non-responsive, has to be coached back up by staff. I mean, this has become Thad Cochran on steroids. But your reaction, Daniel?
You know, Steve, I'm not laughing out of human suffering. I wouldn't do that. I was laughing out of the Chamber of Commerce sign that just came into vision when that was happening. I mean, is that not a metaphor for the GOP, for really the well-fed right for our entire livelihoods, our entire 2 generations? They never focus on the issue that matters and the way it matters at the time it matters. So all of our colleagues will be up in arms. Yeah, Mitch has got to go. It's terrible. But I want to share with you a date, June 20th, 2020. So that was already 6 years after I personally recruited against McConnell. And
Matt Bevin, who went on to be governor of Kentucky.
About 12 years after I had started calling for him to step down, by the way, and warning about his brand of republicanism. And I was shouted down by all the Fox hosts, and I won't mention names just for the purpose of where we are now, but all the people that will make fun of him now actually supported him. But June 20th, Donald Trump tweeted out, as we were trying to recruit against him, because often it takes 2 cycles, and he was very unpopular, by the way, among Republican voters. We finally felt like we broke through. He has my complete and full endorsement. And Steve, this wasn't 2016, 2017, where maybe he wants to unify the party. He just won, so he appoints Elaine Chao as Secretary of Transportation. This was 3.5 years into him obstructing the MAGA agenda. And this is the thing. So all of our colleagues are going to promote this. It's terrible. But then who's the new Mitch McConnell? All of his lieutenants that came into office since then, mainly with Trump's endorsement, and the ones in the pipeline like Jim Justice from West Virginia, who's just as bad, almost as much in cognitive decline, or maybe he just has a low IQ. It's hard to tell. We piss away deep red states. We have not grown 1 inch in our ability to make red states red. And now that McCarthy is the more relevant player, because McConnell's the end of his line no matter what. They're like, no, Daniel, focus on McConnell. Remember that during the speakers fight? There was no way to get rid of McConnell. There was no mechanism because it's not a Senate minority leader. It's not something that you need the majority body support for like you do speaker. And all these guys were like, no, McCarthy's good. McConnell's the problem. Yeah, I sure could have used your support 10 years ago, but it wasn't there. So, Steve, it's funny. I'm not even that old, unlike you. And congrats, by the way. I'm not expecting a grandkid yet. But I'm old enough to already come full circle, having tried to fight these battles only to have people that were against me now lament the problems.
For the record, I'm going to be a young grandpa.
Not in my circles.
All right. Yesterday, former President Trump did an interview here on The Blaze with Glenn Beck. 2 things that were said that stood out to me I want to get your response to. Number 1, Glenn asked him directly, are you concerned that you will have to campaign from prison based on what's going on? Now, understand that interview took place at 11 a.m. Eastern yesterday. Just a few hours later, that exact same D.C. court sentenced a bunch of pro-lifers to 11 years in prison. Okay? For blocking abortion access. So this is the district that Trump is in. where a lot of his supporters are still sitting there, by the way, as Sean Davis of the Federalist pointed out, awaiting trials. Still haven't been given trials yet. And they're going to put Trump on trial the day before Super Tuesday, they announced. And he told Glenn Beck, quote, that will never happen, end quote. How much of this is just branding and bravado, right? It's hard to run for president projecting worry and weakness. I mean, if the former president literally tells his people there's a real good chance they're going to try to put me in prison by the election, well, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be like, hey, that sucks, and we'll even donate to your legal defense if we need it, but we got to have a candidate that could actually be on a ballot. And it sounds like it ain't going to be you. See, so how much of this is he's saying it for those reasons? Because being truly publicly forthcoming about the level of legal jeopardy runs in conflict with running a presidential campaign. And how much of it is you think he's potentially just this dissociated from reality?
So Steve, it is definitely not just posturing, because his actions don't comport with it either. He's not endorsing defund, which is the only way to stop this. You have Congressman Andrew Clyde from Georgia just proposed amendments to the Science, Commerce, Justice Appropriations Bill to defund the state and federal prosecutions. And he has not lent support to that. I mean, this is a guy who's standing up. You know, he likes people who are very nice to me, right? I mean, this is a guy who's really standing for him. He will not support it. So it's not just posturing. He really believes it. Now, the question is, why does he believe it? It's one of three things. Either he is so aloof and so narcissistic, he just doesn't get it.
Now, let me pause right there.
His own hide.
You and I both know people that worked in the White House, probably a lot of the same people. I will tell you that I know people that worked in the White House that would tell you that this, number one, is absolutely potentially true. You just don't walk into Trump's inner sanctum and give him bad news.
Yeah, like he's never heard of myocarditis, which I know is the next thing you wanted to talk about. Like, what do you mean? I don't know anyone who had a problem with the vaccines. Yeah. I mean, and I think genuinely he probably is like that, and that in itself is very reflective of the failures of his presidency and what we're slated to deal with, worried to become president again. But I think, again, these are not my words. You and I take this seriously, which is why we're so upset. It's not just the fact that we're not fighting on the tranny stuff and the border and the vaccines and the Green New Deal and all this other stuff, but the political targeting is freaking real. Like you saw with the pro-life activists, like you see with the J6 people, it needs to be dealt with now. And he's serving as a controlled opposition to suck out all the energy and look like he's the ultimate general in that battle against it, while then jujitsuing that energy into a black hole. Hey, it's all good. I have a great defense. It's just like the Mueller thing. Well, wait a minute. You think that the petty jury is going to be less biased than the grand jurists that we saw were bragging about the opportunity to lock up a former president? So I think we need to start considering, and he needs to be asked. And if I would have been, I mean, I know if Glenn got me down there, maybe Glenn won't get the interview again because Trump won't talk to him. But if I would have been there, I would have said, do you know something we don't? Did you already take a plea deal? Or is there some sort of charade going on here? I mean, I'm taking it seriously. I think it's deadly serious. But if he's going to behave that way, does he know something we don't?
The other is when he said that he did a great job with COVID. History will record this, and it doesn't get talked about enough. And then went on to talk about how great they did with ventilators. You know, the machines that killed people in the ERs faster. And then when they figured that out, we actually had landfills full of ventilators, if you'll recall. Remember, we were all joking about ventilator porn? They were still up there at the coronavirus task force briefings talking about ventilators in August while they were piling up in landfills because they figured out we're killing people faster by putting them on ventilators. Okay. Here's the thing. If Mike Pence said those exact same words, there isn't a major platform in conservative media today that would not rightly be destroying him for saying those things. Every meaningful platform on the right would be. Even Fox, which is full of covidiots, would approach it like Pence takes a controversial approach in defending the White House's COVID response. What do you think? But because Trump said it, crickets. Your thoughts?
Steve, this is the central thing that bothers me. As you well know, I care about the presidential race less than anyone else does, because I think it's already gone. What we need to do is we need to have a movement where we actually believe in something, and we will take the areas with our own sphere of influence that are allegedly red and the voters on paper agree with us and make it red. That's my main goal. So the worst thing you can do is lose sight of your own beliefs. I don't care who you want to vote for. It's always going to be strategic because no one's ever exactly where you are. But you never want to deviate from your top 10 issues. For example, I was on vacation, but I saw you put a lot on the line for Governor DeSantis and your endorsement. But you weren't shy about saying, hey, you know, your message on Ukraine there was off message. You gotta clarify that. What's up with that? Mm-hmm. We're not even asking these people not to support Trump. But is there anything this man can do ideologically, morally? I mean, like we see with the hurricane, that will elicit at least a mild rebuke or course correction? Because what that interview with Glenn tells me is that there's no Daniel Horowitz, Steve Deace equivalent on Team Trump that's constantly telling their candidate, you got to get to the right on this, do that. Mm-hmm. It's not strong enough. More, like you are. There's nobody.
Like I will just state for the record, I had a private conversation with the governor the day after the debate, and I made that exact point to him privately, one-on-one, that I made publicly, that Ukraine point is probably, that dog ain't going to hunt. That's not going to work. So just so people know that. Okay, go ahead.
You and I will never deviate from our stated beliefs. And this is all we ask of them. All these people that would have us on their shows the last 2 years, and it was great when Trump was out of the picture, and he was until November of last year, we were starting to rebuild a movement. It was actually really nice. And I thought we were headed to somewhere good. And now suddenly crickets when the guy, forget about just warp speed, he's still pimping the lockdowns and the ventilators. I mean, this is out of control. And I believe, if I remember correctly, he offered that unprompted from Glenn. I think Glenn asked him about the economy, and somehow he started talking about the ventilators. So that tells me that there's never been any internal pushback. What does that tell you headed forward? Forget about the whole legal issues and the general election. Let's say he were to become president. Do you have confidence that there is a movement in place to keep him on the right or move him to the right on issues we need to? That's what bothers me about that. Like you said with Mike Pence, look, let's say you had Mitt Romney, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, heck, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins as the GOP nominee. At least I have the confidence that when they start with the pimping Ukraine and criminal justice reform and open borders and vaccines are always awesome, that we will have a unified movement moving in the opposite direction. We don't have that with this man. That's what scares me. There's something about him that will make our colleagues stand down to the point that if you live in Florida, you're now not allowed to talk about the existence of the hurricane or any of the great things that Ron is doing that we all said we agreed with. You're even going to start race baiting with Kamala Harris against their education reforms. This is a big, big problem from which you can't recover.
That was some woe and lamentation, my friend. Way to live up to the branding. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
Later. Take it.
You bet. Got about a minute here for final thoughts from each of you. Floor is open.
Why can't Daniel just murder somebody for the cause? Get on. Come on, Daniel. Read the Times.
When he talks about caring less about the presidential election than anybody else, I try not to let my mind go there too often because we also kind of have a job to do here. But I'm tempted to go there multiple times, regardless of who the nominees are. It's just the federal Leviathan increasingly seems to be off the board. And one of the reasons why I try to temper myself from going there, and I'm not saying this is why Daniel has arrived at this conclusion as well, is because the system wants you to believe that. That's actually a flex. And if that is true, then we're not without hope. We are never without hope. but that has some implications that are uncomfortable and will continue to be uncomfortable for the rest of our lives.
Just a reminder that Trump is who he is now as much as ever before because of who we are, less than because of who he is.
That's true, too. That's also why we don't demand any better from him.
Yes.
Because of who we are. John 3:17.